Welcome to Varn Blog Solo. And today I'm talking about discipline again, but this time generated from a question that was asked me by two different um, listeners, one on the YouTube and one privately through my Patreon. And that is, what's the difference between political and personal discipline? And could you go into some more things about personal and political discipline that would clarify the distinction? So my first video was focusing on self-discipline, and that's discipline that you invoke for yourself and on yourself. And you can take this in a lot of the ways. Self-help is based a lot on this, but also I really do believe this, that you really can't do a lot of politics without having a lot of disciplined habits. And there were some things I pointed out in that first video, which was a lot more angry than today video is going to be. That one of the best ways to understand and make yourself self-disciplined is to join a group and have obligations which you cannot easily get out of, but that you want. You know, a family, being a part of the union. And these things should not just take from you either. All right, you should choose them wisely. Know the conditions in which you are going into them. Now, you'll notice that of the two things, one of the things I mentioned is a political thing in and of itself, the union, right? So start thinking about selecting things in your life that you have access to that involve other people that you want and get mutual benefit from, right? Obligation that does not have payback is a way to be a sucker. And that payback should be more than some vague nebulous notion of community. That's how people get sucked into cults. Getting sucked into cults is not an intelligence issue. It's usually a loneliness issue or a total ideology which you can view the world issue and have that given to you, because a lot of people are exhausted from the social grind of their life. But that's the basic first step. So I'm going to name a few things that I consider important for self-discipline and then talk about the way political discipline may extend from that and some things that don't come from that. But we're talking about political discipline that issues from you. We're not talking about being disciplined by a party or a union, you know, things that where someone does something to you. Because part of self-discipline is so that doesn't happen. All right. So one of the things is really know your strengths and your weaknesses. And I mean, really, really know. Don't project upon yourself. Listen to what other people tell you. They may be wrong about why you're doing something. They may be wrong about who you are, but they often see something you don't. Everyone's eyes point out. So pay attention and then start modeling people's minds. Why are they telling you that? Sometimes your enemy will tell you the most honest thing about you because it's going to hurt. Right? Why do your enemies feel the way they do about you? Is it ideological? Is it personal? Are you on a different team, or have you comported yourself in ways that are distasteful to them? Figure that out. Model it. If you make a threat in those regards, you should be able and willing to carry it out. You know, I know this because I'm hot-headed. This is one of my weaknesses. But also design your life until you get your weakness under control so that your weakness is not always there for you. If you struggle with addiction, you don't go to parties where people are doing the thing you are addicted to. If you struggle with drinking, you don't hang out with heavy drinkers when they are drinking. And you definitely don't go to an AA meeting and pick up your partner. because you're likely to relapse. I've seen it over and over again. Now, if you can't do these things for yourself, how the hell are you going to do these things for a political group? Read and understand and know the culture of the groups you participate in. Select the people in your life who will reflect that to you. And I know a lot of people are lonely, and I know a lot of social institutions have broken down. Dating apps are harder to use, friend groups are harder to be there. So use your Discord groups if you're in them and find the people in your area and meet up with them. Have your book groups on Zoom or in person if you're going to do that. If you have trouble not running your mouth in dumb ways on Twitter or X or TikTok or whatever, moderate your account. Allow people to save face when they interact with you. Give them an out. If they don't take it, then you have conflict and you have to deal with that. But it is disciplined to give people an out. Now, we're already seeing here, I'm giving you advice on building your social group. This is also advice for building political discipline. All right. It is not just projecting the attitudes of the tribe you want to be seen as, since those attitudes change all the time. I've pointed out in the past that even attitudes about dating that we thought were super sacrosanct and loved in young people have changed dramatically in as little as 2 years. The discourse on people dating people older than them has completely changed in regards to Zoomer women. Leftists used to think very recently that age gap relationships of more than a few years were totally unacceptable. Liberals even more so than leftists. Today you hear about Zoomer women dating millennial men. One that actually does fit a pattern of women dating men who are older and matured, probably because at least in our culture, women tend to mature faster because they have more obligatory social connections. That might sound sexist. I'm not saying it's innate. I'm just saying it's the way we socialize people who identify as women in our society. But beyond that, that was celebrated because millennial men have less sexist views, supposedly, than a lot of people under 25 who have been socialized largely by the internet. Now, I only bring this up because that's just a shift in morality. My personal morality does not change on things like that. Now, I'm not dating young women anyway, but nonetheless, that's something to know. The morality that is in the vibes of the political groupings that you're in is often subject to change and change quickly due to all sorts of both material and cultural inputs. You need to know yourself well enough to know what is good for you when those things change. By extension, when it comes to politics, you need to do some of the same things I said when picking a peer group to become immersed in. All right. You need to be cautious about entering groups that you do not think meet your criterion. There are groups that I support in larger groups that I won't join because there are blocks that I think would be a breaker for me. I would not be in solidarity with some people on the opposite end of that group, even though there are people in that group very close to me, and it would be tempting to join. There are at least 2 or 3 caucuses in the DSA that I think are pretty decent. I don't join the DSA because I do not want to be that close to Democratic politicians that we cannot control in the DSA. I do not think the DSA has built up its own institutions robust enough to do that, even though I believe in the mission of several groups in the DSA. If those groups became the dominant focus in that culture through internal debate and not shenanigans, I would join at that point. That is discipline. I know it seems like opting out, and I am that way because I've learned from mistakes. I have joined political groups that I thought I understood, realized I did not understand, that there were people in those groups that I could not be in solidarity with, and I left. Do not call yourself an ally performatively unless you can put your skin in the game. That takes discipline. In fact, my standard is people can call me an ally, but I do not call myself an ally to any abstraction. I might call myself an ally to an individual who I identify with and identify with their cause, which might be tied to very abstract causes. Gender equality, anti-racism, this, that, or the other. But I'm not going to make a decision that I am an ally to abstract. And a lot of people come at me for that. But again, this is me being disciplined. It is not one for me to say if I am actually an ally to an abstraction. In my mind, I can only be an ally to individuals or groups that have goals that I can endorse, at least in part. There are compromises that can be made with groups that I'm not willing to join. For those of you who want my elaborate philosophy of this is a philosophy of the United Front. There are people I will not join with or sit in a governing coalition with if I was ever in such a position, which I'm probably never going to be. But if I was, I would not run as a Democratic Party candidate, even if I might caucus, if I was in a local school board or city council with progressives in the Democratic Party. But even that's dangerous, and we've seen that that can lead to capture. Can you stand alone or speak for a party that actually represents your interests? That takes discipline. It is an extension of selecting groups that are good for you. It's an extension of understanding the way large groups work. Now, there are groups that I join with that there are people who have vastly different politics than me, but because we have very clear delineated aims, like in my teachers association and union, I will limitedly sit with them. My union is mostly moderate liberals and moderate conservatives, very few of whom are, rabidly pro-Trump. Many are LDS, but we have clear goals as far as education is concerned. So there is a clear skin in the game solidarity. It is not abstract. It is not purely performative. And again, this requires mutual obligation and discipline. There are some things in the union meeting, in both directions, I might add, that I roll my eyes at, but I'm not going to cause someone to lose face. I will correct them if I think they are egregiously wrong privately. And if they're really, really going offhand and it risks the solidarity of the group, I will pursue internal disciplinary action. But I can tell you, I've actually never done that. Most things I can handle by negotiation interpersonally. But this brings me to another point. Do not confuse performative politics with people who have your back politically. This is also a disciplined point because it is easier to go with people who you think project the way you do. People may notice that even though I am personally extremely sectarian, my opinions are very vociferous, and there are groupings that I do not love dealing with, and yet I will work with them on a local level because we have clear, similar goals, and they act in accordance with that. Now, if they try to damage any of the other organizations I care about, they get yeeted. But in general, I do not hold people's ideology as the primary thing about them, both on the left and in life. That said, I also do not try to adopt or tail the cultural positions of other people. And again, this is an act of discipline because tailing makes you popular. And I'll get to popularity and discipline in a second, because popularism is usually an undisciplined, a-principled, opportunistic approach to politics that usually backfires in your fucking face for the reasons that I mentioned a little while back in the personal section. One of the reasons why I'm so big on political programs and not nebulous orientations is that political programs, I can know what the goals are that we need to agree on to be a viable actor. What is the minimum of agreement? Not nebulous left unity, because nebulous left unity is a pretty useless thing. I do not know what the true ideology of people who identify as the left even are, because the left is a directional metaphor. It moves all over the place. I want a political program with clear delineation of what we are trying to achieve, either in the form of a minimum or transitional program. It needs to be brief. It needs to be clear. And on immediate action steps, it needs to be possible. Now, the maximum program or the long-term orientation can be nearly utopian. Some of mine are. I am building towards that, and the agreement on what we're building towards is also important. But those visions are necessarily vaguer. You will notice what I do not suggest people do is build political discipline off of ideological consistency, because ideological consistency is about ideas, and you can't know what is in anyone's head, not really. You can know what the achievable action items are and the basic principles of which those action items are based. So, a program. And you should be disciplined enough not to be fooled by anything more nebulous that appeals to other parts of your personality. You also should know when you enter the political groups what you are good at and bad at. I am good, personally, at reading through charters, programs, and seeing what is actionable and not. And I am good at eating my hat, believe it or not, because you don't see this part of me on the show ever, and apologizing to people when I do something wrong in a group and rebuilding that trust. I am good at promoting people who I may not politically agree with, but whom I do not find objectionable and who I think will do the job. Because, and Machiavelli's right about this actually, the person who is a little bit further away from you politically and maybe be an opponent, and sometimes who you support, is more loyal and more likely to build compromises that make your vision of politics more viable. And again, that takes a lot of self-discipline, because it is easy not to like the people who are not exactly on your side. Conversely, when I've done political jobs, and political jobs are generally a bad idea, but we sometimes have to do them. When I've done political jobs, there have been people I've liked or been close to who I will not work with, because I know our weaknesses are not copacetic. And often I'm right, and often those fallouts come eventually and deeper than expected anyway. This brings me to popularity and popularism in politics. One, A disciplined stance is popularity is not the same as leverage. You can be popular and have no political leverage in a political movement and be ineffective. Now, you would say popularity is leverage. Popularity is leverage as you can use it to get the things you need. I was arguing with someone on Twitter about the weathermen, and they got mad at me because I said the weathermen killed their own. They killed 3 of their own in a bombing by being negligent. And then the person asked me, well, their other bombing campaigns went well. And I was like, well, what did they get for those bombing campaigns? Like, what political goal would they achieve? Not just that the bombing campaigns went off and they didn't kill anyone, which they didn't, other than themselves by accident. But the political goals weren't met. Actions that do not meet the ends to which they are done are still failures, even when they go off without a hitch. There is no A for effort in politics. But popularism and popularity are the feeling of jouissance when you're doing something, even if that thing does not reach a strategic goal, can hit dopamine receptors that make you act in ways that actually undo your long-term goals. It is absolutely crucial, completely and totally essential that you remember you need not just popularity, but popularity that gives you and your political allies and your comrades leverage for the things that you said you were going to do, not just for your own personal aggrandizement. Am I a union boss because I want the power of being a petty tyrant? Or am I a union boss because my office, my shop floor, my whatever needs these things? I am good at getting them, so I'm going to step up to that role. Do I align my mission personally with my efforts for the group in a way that also feeds me? All right, I am not telling you to be selfless. I am not telling you that self-discipline is altruism, because it isn't. Altruism is often, frankly, narcissistic. No, what I am telling you is that can you do something for the right reasons that also helps you? And can you maintain that your actions will lead to the things that you need that also align with what you said you're going to do? This is hard, and it takes a lot of self-honesty. You might not be good at certain things. All right? I am good at working a floor. I am not good at canvassing. I am good at getting signatures if I need to. I am better at helping people get those signatures and figuring out strategic places where you can get those signatures to get something on a ballot initiative, or support to do a union or a card check or whatever. Organizing is always organizing for something other than some vague notion of being an organizer. And that, again, is related to discipline. It's an extension of that personal discipline. And the personal discipline, are you going to build obligations and mutuality that feed you, that also acknowledges your strengths and weaknesses that you have cultivated in your lifetime, some of which are in your control and some of which are not? If you cannot do that with that group, you don't need that group. That is true politically too. I promise you that even if you had a broad ideology, let's say your broad ideology is socialism, there's going to be times where you have allies who are diametrically opposed to each other. You know how many people in my life do not like Ben Burgess? Ben Burgess is my friend and ally. Our politics are actually very different. Ben doesn't think so, but I do. But here's the deal. When I disagree with Ben, I let him know. when I disagree, sometimes I'll even let him know publicly, but I do not go after him bitterly to do it. Now, there are times where I go after people bitterly, but that's almost always because of personal betrayal and what I consider dishonest behavior. It it is almost never purely ideological. Now, there does have to be ideological lines where there are people you won't deal with. There does. All right. There are people that I know personally that I conversate with on a regular basis. There are conservatives in my life. I live in Utah. I come from Georgia. Of course, there are. That I have made, compromises with to achieve a thing in a union or on anti-war work, or even to get like a prison not built that's going to be private, because I used to do work in that field with my partner, and all sorts of things. And sometimes you had to make alliances tactically that you did not like. But I also made it clear what I was not willing to do, who I was not willing to break bread with, and why. And there are people who I even converse with personally, because I actually don't think ethics and politics are totally copacetic. In fact, I think politics requires some sacrifice of the ethical, even to create a more ethical world. Because your ethical vision is about the way you treat other people. Morality is about self-integrity for me. I have clear definitions of this. Morality tends to be about internal integrity. Ethics is about integrity in dealing with others and with other groups. Again, discipline is crucial for this too. It's like the prime virtue for this. But also, I know that politics involves so many different kinds of ethics, even within a class. Let's say we're not doing class collaborations and we're just working within the working class. I wish there was one set of working class ethics, but there isn't. There's not one prime virtue. I have to have the discipline to know when I'm going to have to swallow some things and when I'm not willing to do so. What is so damaging to my ethical world and my politics that is not willing to do? And again, that takes discipline and self-reflection and honor and things you don't hear the left talk a lot about. You do not want to be a person caught up in the gust of political sentiment because they change. I'm not saying you should be anachronistic and not been with the time. You will have to learn, evolve, and grow. Your virtues cannot be practiced alone. But you have to be disciplined enough also to have enough core to see where you can move and adapt and where you can't. That's also a political discipline. So, can you insist that you have clear goals, like a program, beyond an ideology, that your ideological requirements and your goals are a unity of means and ends, and create a way for you to both live and embody what you say, but also align your ideological goals to that? Can you understand where your limits are and what you are good at and not good at, both ethically and talent and competence wise? Can you align yourself to that? Can you allow saving a face when you're angry? Can you apologize when you go too far? Can you show solidarity? Can you only perform things that you mean? I'm not saying you will never be performative in politics. Of course you will be. And people are like, oh, I don't do the politics of respectability. Well, honestly, then you're not doing politics. It's who you're trying to be respectable for. If you don't want to be respectable for a bunch of centrist milquetoast weirdos who are a bunch of, Pollyanna capitalists, then of course, yeah, fuck them. But if you want to be respectable to working class people whose values you share and whose worlds and particularities you wish to know and understand, you better well think about how you present yourself. And you should try to align yourself to those things. And if you can't do that, it is better for you to be a fellow traveler, to be a theory nerd, to be whatever you want to be in those politics that does not require that kind of obligation. And knowing who you are and what you can do takes extreme discipline. And again, if you don't know it, someone else will figure it out for you. I hope this is helpful. We can come back to this topic again at any time. Remember that the personal is not the political, but they're also not totally separate. They are in a feedback loop with each other. If you cannot act in a way that is worth being a comrade because of your personal behavior, then you cannot be a comrade. But do not confuse your personal responses with politics. And yes, it is unfortunately true that most people's political alliances are not entirely rational and not entirely ideological. So can you comport yourself in a way that keep people who are mixed up and confused in life loyal to you and your political vision and what you subordinate yourself to willingly? And if you do not agree and you cannot subordinate yourself to those missions, you should not be in it. You should find a niche where you fit. And that requires both self-discipline and self-knowledge. And do not get gussied up in the winds of popularism, because it'll make it a lot easier to fail on these things. And the dopamine hit and the illusory sense of power can make it so. I've watched people destroy themselves to try to be popular, to follow where the winds of the market are, where the likes are. I've seen them tear their relationships up in public. I've seen them tear their politics up, and I've seen them make them a laughingstock of themselves. And they get big sometimes doing it. But I would not even call them a sex worker in your modern politics. I would say a prostitute, but I'm going to try to respect people's speech. Although I will say, sex worker flattened out a whole lot of things, but that's a discussion for another time. I would not insult a sex worker by saying that those people act like sex workers, because sex workers usually do have some integrity, and a lot of these people don't. Do not sell yourself out for likes. Do not bend your political morality for the gust of popular sentiment. And if you get nothing else from this video, take that away, because that will protect your peace. And protect your peace, because you need it. Self-discipline is self-care. And to be a good comrade, you got to have your shit together. Take care of yourselves. Varn out.